The Gorosei say something in chapter 1044 that is true, but potentially not the entire full picture here. And the reason why is because we know as the audience that Luffy can do certain things, but what they say doesn't cover the entire thing. And of course, what they say is about Luffy and his abilities, the Nika ability. Possessing a body with the properties of rubber and fighting whatever way he fancies, bringing smiles to the faces of the people, the warrior liberation, also known as Nika the Sun God. Awakening brings his rubbery body greater physical strength and freedom. So we all know that's true because we can see in real time against Kaido. He is doing the craziest thing. His defense has spiked to a whole new level of power. At this point in time, Luffy is probably the best person in the verse when it comes to defense, maybe excluding Kaido. If you're a Diamond Jozu supporter, okay, fair enough, Diamond Jozu. But outside of like a scant few dudes, Luffy's defense and durability is absurd. It's off the charts. His actual strength and speed have increased so much over in Gear 5. I mean, we can see how big his hand was in 144 when he first grabbed Kaido and how he was literally throwing Kaido around. We can see in 145, he's jump rope skipping Kaido. We can see in giant form how big he is. So clearly, we know that Luffy's body has been souped up to a whole new insane level. But what about the fire? Huh? The fire. What is going on with Luffy's fire or lack thereof? Because we know that Luffy has the Red series. He has the Red Hawk and the Red Rock. And in the past, the Red Hawk and the Red Rock were seemingly attacks that were based on Armored Haki hardening plus Gear 2 to use that fire in some capacity. But now that we see Luffy's design in Gear 5, with that flaming hair that's probably white. And we can also see sometimes the smoke ring around the shoulders also appears that's on fire. Like when we see his Gigant form in 1045, that smoke ring around the shoulders is also like kind of on fire. Luffy's design is somewhat modeled after fire. As a sun god, it makes a degree of sense. And you have to wonder, okay, well the moon is out and his design is all white. Maybe that will change when the sun does come out, and then let's see, it's gonna be all yellow, something like that. And then that's when we actually see the fire stuff. But the man is grabbing lightning, so, oh man, woo, him grabbing lightning was absurd. And I did a video on that one a few days ago, ultimately saying that maybe Luffy can actually control lightning because of various sun god effects. Watch that video. It's over here somewhere. Watch that video. It's a good video, without a doubt. But because he is the sun god, that is tailored to specifically one piece. So you can't look solely at, let's say, Greek or Norse or Hindu or Buddhist deities, stuff like that, and kind of gauge Luffy. He's like an amalgamation, potentially, of so many different things. And Luffy is essentially only limited to what Oda can imagine. That's scary. But ultimately speaking, where is the fire? And when I think about it, things in the past that we've seen Luffy do with fire, the Red Hawk, the Red Rock, him in Punk Hazard running so fast that he actually made flaming tracks on the ground, even though we've seen him move faster than that for sure, and there are no flaming tracks on the ground at those point in times. Or let's even him tanking Kaido's blast breath full on in 1002, these things that relate to fire with Luffy, whether it's both offense and defense, could all have root ties to ultimately Luffy's Death of Power, the Hito Hitonomi model Nika. This is why your boy has been pumping out these Luffy videos for the past few days, because there are so many possibilities on what Luffy can do. There's so many! And in this situation, I think we have to look at, first and foremost, the other mythical Zoans that also utilize fire. In this particular case, primarily Kaido and Marco. Because in their case, we can clearly see that fire isn't just used for like one particular thing, like for attack power. So for example, Kaido here has his blast breath, which can change and vary in size across the spectrum. Like his first blast breath could destroy an entire mountain that we saw in Act 1, but then in 1045, he gives Luffy a point-blank blast breath so huge it would cover damn near the entire island of Onigashima and then some. So he has phenomenal fire attack power, without a doubt. But then also, he does weird things with his fire, like the flaming clouds. The dragons have flaming clouds that they use to walk through the air. They don't actually fly. They use those flaming clouds. And with Kaido, they always look around his arms in dragon form. But also, we can see him obviously use these flaming clouds to pick up the entire island of Onigashima. They just kind of stay there and hover there as they levitate the entire island. And in the anime, they're actually denoted to in the color of purple. So his flaming clouds are distinguished in that purple color. Then there's Marco the Phoenix, where his actual Phoenix fire is like a sparkling blue, yellowish kind of fire that doesn't really burn per se, because we haven't seen him actually burn someone. But we have seen him do things that are very unique to the properties of the Phoenix fire, and only Marco can do these things with this fire. Of course, the main one being his insane regeneration. Hockey or not, the man can just regenerate no problem. As long as he's stamina, that's kind of scary. Then he can actually do things like reinforce other folks' bodies with his fire from cold temperatures. We see that on Onigashima with the Ice Oni, where he's actually reinforcing people's bodies, and even though they're completely cold, with the Phoenix fire, it's warm, not actually really hurting them, and gives them a sense of comfort. And then we've seen him actually do things like grab King and Queen with Phoenix wings, but they don't actually burn. Even his Bluebird doesn't burn. Marco doesn't really burn with his fire. So you can see here in the case of Kaido and Marco, they each have mythical fire attributes that are really unique to what they can do. And I think Luffy is kind of similar and like a mix of the two, where Luffy has, of course, clearly attack-based fire in terms of the Red Hawk and the Red Rock. For some reason, let's say he can't do this kind of stuff in his Nika form, at least when the moon is out, maybe when the sun's up, who the hell knows, he can do it outside of Gear 5. That is obvious.
Correct.
But then he may also have a natural defensive measure against fire, because in chapter 1045, Kaido gives this man a point-blank blast breath. And Kaido's fire is clearly very potent, very powerful. But Luffy is burnt black by this huge flame wave. And Luffy just shrugs that off and proceeds to run on the sky afterwards. Luffy, I think, for his own body, may be very similar to Marco in some sense, where because he's the sun god, other various forms of fire don't necessarily hurt him that much. So let's say it's a regular flamethrower compared to Kaido's blast breath. If Luffy's in Gear 5, that's doing nothing. That's actually doing just flat out zero damage, because Luffy probably negates a lot of fire innately, just how Marco's Phoenix fire can naturally overcome other various forms of fire. And the Kaido side of things is even wilder and crazier, even more so than the Marco one, because Luffy negating fire to a degree naturally is one thing. What if Luffy, when he ran in the air, it could have been a skywalk thing, potentially, but it seems a bit weird, especially when you look at the sound effects of the screech, 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 and the vroom. That a vroom is not a skywalk. A skywalk is a sonic boom, 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 boom. No, it's very, very different. I get the feeling that he's actually either A, using that fire to propel himself as he like runs in the air, and or B, he's also running on the flame tracks. Kaido can support himself and an entire island with his mythical fire. Maybe Luffy can also support himself with his mythical fire in the air. Oh, now see that's kind of nuts. That's kind of crazy. Wow. I mean, if that's the case here, then there is potentially a metric ton of what Luffy can do when it comes to the fire attribute of his own fire. So the mythical Zoans that do use fire to an extent have mystical properties with some of their fire. Kaido, obviously. Marco, obviously, and Luffy, I would have to assume, is the same way as well. And this fire attribute of Luffy can explain so much that we see in the past for Luffy and what we're seeing right now against Kaido in real time. And then also, what's interesting too here is, it's not, okay, here we go. Maybe Yamato is also fire as well, but she's cold fire.
What do you mean by that?
This is weird, but kind of, for a second, roll with your boy. Because we see her design in both hybrid form and in full wolf form, and her design is actually very similar to Luffy's design, where she also has some sort of smoke ring around her shoulders, like Luffy does. Even her tail looks like it's kind of on fire. Again, just like Luffy, she has a lot of like fire base effects for her design, in furry form, mind you.
Mutant.
And when you go to the anime, episode 1009, when we first see her fangs, they actually added something new in the anime compared to the manga. She's actually standing there against Sasaki. She's kind of charging up, and we see like a white blue crystal-like fire around her. Huh? So personally, and I'm on the record for saying this a few times, at least a few times, the anime, for me personally, this arc, I think has a lot of details that Oda wanted to put in the manga, but didn't have the time to do it. We've seen, in a few cases, the anime spoil the manga. The anime for Wano Country, I think, is actually more important than any other arc in One Piece. Absolutely, absolutely. And I've been proven correct on that, I think, a few times, to say the least. And when I see Yamato do this kind of blue, whitish, crystal-like fire when she's pissed off at Sasaki, and then I see her design that kind of matches Luffy's design, but like a furry version of it, I get the feeling now that when it comes to the mythical type motto, Okuchi no Makami, she's probably using this kind of cold aura that at times looks like fire. You can even go as far as to say that her ability even operates like fire to a degree, because her Namuji Glacier Fang does look like Kaido's Blast Breath in chapter 1020, but it's drawn with a lighter shade, I guess to represent cold, and then his a little darker outside shade to represent heat or fire in this case. She's also applying this sort of cold aura to her club without her club even freezing over, like her hollowed Glacier Slash in chapter 1025, or her Maharoba in 1038. And it's kind of similar in a way, I think, to what Luffy does with his own fist for a Red Hawk. So her icy cold aura is very different than, let's say, Aokiji or Monet and how their cold powers work. Hers are much more, I guess the term is here, looser or more malleable, something of that sort, where you could argue maybe it is a weird version of fire. So when you look at Marco and his blue, yellowish, mystical phoenix fire, you look at Kaido and his mystical purple fire, you look at potentially Yamato and her like blue, whitish, crystallish fire, Luffy having his own mystical fire as well, right? For whatever it does, makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I'm actually looking forward to the dawn. I really want to see if there's any changes for Luffy's physique when the sun rises, and if we start to see some crazy fire stuff. Because there's actually a good chance, I think, a very good chance, that the final attack on Kaido will be some sort of fire-based punch ability that Luffy does to seal the deal. That would not surprise me in the slightest.